All right, thank you everyone. Welcome to our first webinar. Tonight is on wildlife and wildlands. We have a lot of very exciting, very knowledgeable people joining us today around prairies, grasslands, pollinators, wildlife, gardens, and some fire as well. And then our next two webinars are next Tuesday and the Tuesday. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, just say that one thing again.
Okay. Sorry, I just got one that was like, Zoom is doing something. The next two Tuesdays are the next webinars. One is the working lands and water, a little bit more about farming and woods and water. And then the final one is about people and infrastructure and community, kind of all the other fun stuff about owning land. So if tonight some of your questions don't get answered, there is more coming. And next slide is a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. If we ask you to mute yourself, if you're new to Zoom, if you kind of hover your mouse over your Zoom screen, a little black bar will come up at the bottom. To the left is your mute, and then it says video. If there's a red slash, that means you're on mute and your video is not going. So right now you would like a red slash through both of those. If you go over a little bit, there's a little chat bubble. If you click that open, you can send a chat to people. We invite you to use the chat function if you like tonight to ask questions. If someone has a question for you all, you can participate that way as well. And then and you can also see who you're chatting to right here. And one more thing, I am going to also launch a poll. This poll is a part of our federal reporting. This is a project through a grant that we're doing, reaching new landowners and landowners through Wisconsin. So we just want to make sure we hear from you. I'm going to launch this poll. It'll come up to your screen. It is an anonymous survey. And then once you're done with the poll, I'm going to hand it over to Tierney, one of my coworkers, and we're going to get started, all right? And then if you're having any troubles with the polls or the microphone, you can also reach out to me. My name should be on the screen right there with my email address and my work cell phone number.
Great, thanks, Olivia.
All right, we're gonna move on to our next screen. Tierney, can you see that?
Yep. We're good to go. All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Tierney Boxey. I'm a PhD student at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, working with this awesome team who's joining us over Zoom tonight. And thank you all for being here tonight, as Olivia said, for our first webinar of our three-part series. So special thanks to my colleagues and our co-hosts for their hard work coordinating these events. And thank you to our fabulous lineup of presenters for bringing your valuable knowledge to share with us. A little bit more about us. We are the New Landowner project team. Our group has been working on a USDA-funded project for the past 5 years or so, doing research as well as outreach to new landowners, or landowners that may not necessarily be new to owning land, but perhaps new to managing or stewarding their land. And so along those lines, we created this webinar series with the hopes of reaching those landowners such as yourselves and helping them to understand and tap into the many resources available to them, knowing that with the responsibility of owning land can come the responsibility of stewarding your land. Next slide, please. This is also the launching of our land stewardship webpage. And so the beta version just went live, and we encourage you to check it out later and provide feedback so that we can continue to develop and refine this resource. So tonight, we're going to hear from a suite of conservation organizations and professionals specifically focused on wildlife and wildlands. So the folks and the types of programs who can help you navigate management choices around prairies, grasslands and savannas, wildlife, and gardens and pollinators. We hope that you stick with us for the next 2 weeks, where we'll be talking more about woods, water, and farming during the second webinar. And as Olivia mentioned, our third week will be about structures and roads, relationships with family, neighbors, and the broader community, and the legal side of land ownership. And so Again, like Olivia said, hang on to your questions if they don't get answered tonight, and join us in those upcoming weeks. So Wisconsin's landscape is composed of a myriad of different ecosystems, which can lead to differing goals and even issues that go along with the landscape and what you may hope to achieve on your own property, from farmland to forest management, wildlife, waterfront properties, prairie restoration, just to name a few examples. And one of the really valuable things that our professionals, the organization, will be covering tonight. And so the way this is going to work tonight is we're going to hear briefly from each organization about their work. And once we've heard from each presenter, we'll move into the breakout sessions, where you all have a chance to talk with the professionals in a small group setting. You're welcome to choose a breakout group and just simply sit in on the conversation, ask questions in chat, and so on. And we'll be here kind of in the main Zoom room to help you move around from breakout rooms to breakout rooms if you need help and need to figure out where you might want to go. I want to kindly remind you that this webinar is for you as landowners, so please feel free to take notes, have questions ready for the presenters. They are excited to connect with you. And we also know that it can be a lot of information to take in. We'll be going through many organizations, people, programs. So we do suggest picking one or two organizations you think you might like to follow up with after you leave here tonight and jotting those down. All right, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Myha Ewoldt, and she is with the Conservation Reserve Program as a state specialist. And Myha's favorite springtime activity is foraging. All right, take it away, Myha.
All right. Hi, everybody. So I work with the Farm Service Agency, which is under that USDA umbrella, and I'm going to present on one of our programs, which is the Conservation Reserve Program, or CRP program. And CRP is a program where participants will plant a cover, whether that's trees, flowers, grasses, on eligible cropland, and the goal of the program is soil erosion, improving water quality, and/or creating wildlife habitat. CRP is going to be a longer term program compared to some of the other programs that you'll be introduced to tonight. So typically contracts run for 10 to 15 years. As I said, cover can be a lot of different things. We can do ponds, we can do flowers, grasses, trees, a lot of different variety of covers. Cropland is the other factor for the CRP program. So we have to have land that is croppable today, and then also has a history of being cropped. And so we, right now with the current Farm Bill, take a look at 2012 to 2017. And so we need to see 4 out of those 6 years cropped. And we can look at commodity crops, corn, soybeans, and hay can also be an eligible crop. And you just have to go to your local FSA to figure out if your land qualifies. The other factor is that you have to own the land or rent the land for at least 12 months. So what do you get in return for doing the CRP program? So you will get an annual rental payment that is based on your soil type. You get that every year for the 10 or 15 years of your contract. And rental payments are based on soil type, which factors in the productivity of the soil as well as average cash rent. In addition to those rental payments, you also get cost share money. So 50% cost share to cover your costs of site prep, the planting, and then the seed or trees, as well as typically one mowing after planting. Some signups also have incentive payments on top of that. So some of our programs right now, like Monarch Habitat is a popular one, has essentially 100% payback for the site prep, the planting, the seeds. So a lot of incentive for doing those programs. And then lastly, you get technical assistance. So you have someone from Natural Resources Conservation Service or Pheasants Forever telling you how to plant, when to plant, how to maintain. And what we expect of you for the program. I see the hooray for monarchs, absolutely. But yeah, expectations for the program. A lot of people confuse CRP with what was known as a set-aside program back in the day. It is not a set-it and forget-it program. It is a program where you have to maintain your cover. So you're establishing and maintaining for those 10 or 15 years. In addition to that, it's constant communication with FSA, just letting us know if you're having issues, if you want someone to come out and take a look at something, if you want to do something additional on the land. And then also just reporting to us each year that the cover is still out there. So if anybody has any questions, we can definitely cover more of that in the breakout session. And I will put my contact info in the chat. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Myha. All right, next up we have Dan Carter, who is an ecologist with the Prairie Enthusiasts. And Dan's favorite spring activity is getting out in the field again. Go ahead, Dan.
Thanks. And I was out today before it stormed, and hopefully I don't, my kids are bouncing around upstairs because the storm's just arriving, and so hopefully that doesn't come through my audio too much. So I'll talk a little bit about the Prairie Enthusiasts. We're a land trust, and like other land trusts, we protect land. So most of that for us is in South Central and Southwestern Wisconsin, but we also protect land a little bit in Southeastern Wisconsin, up in the St. Croix Valley, and in Northwest Illinois, because we extend into Illinois and Minnesota as well. But on top of protecting land, we have a real emphasis on land stewardship. So most of our land holdings are stewarded by volunteer stewards. You know, we conduct prescribed burns, and we do the other work necessary to restore and maintain fire-dependent ecosystems. We protect and work in prairies and open savannas and oak woodlands and open wetland types like sedge meadows and fens, basically fire-dependent ecosystems broadly. But we also have education as a part of our mission. And so we hold an annual conference. 3 times a year, we publish a publication called the Prairie Promoter, which usually has content that ranges from land management to science to art and creative writing, all sort of around prairie and fire-dependent ecosystems. I'm their staff ecologist, and one of the things I do for my job is visit member landowners and help them understand what opportunities they have on their properties. A lot of people who acquire new properties find that they have opportunities to restore remnant natural communities. It's not very often that it's prairie, but oftentimes there's sedge meadow or oak woodland, or maybe an opportunity to restore open oak savanna. I don't come with a lot of capacity or money for actually conducting work, but we're a chapter-based organization, and one of our chapters has a lot of prescribed burn capacity. So the chapter we have south of Madison, called the Prairie Bluff chapter, does do some contracted burns for private landowners, but mostly we're conducting prescribed burns on properties we protect or places where we have management agreements with a focus on remnant natural communities. And I mentioned that we're a chapter-based organization, and so the chapters are all kind of different, and it sort of depends on where you live. In some places, it's really just a community of practice for people that are trying to restore and manage fire-dependent ecosystems, and in other places there is much more emphasis on land protection. Places that we protect and we're proud of would be places like the site behind me, which is Black Earth Redmond Prairie in western Dane County, which I would say is probably the best prairie there is to go see. And also the Mounds View Grassland, which is a larger scale landscape project where you can see both restoration and management of remnant prairies, but also reconstruction of prairie that has achieved a lot of remnant-like characteristics. And that's it. I'll put my contact in the chat as well.
Great. Thanks so much, Dan. Up next, we have David Drake, who is a professor and extension wildlife specialist. And David loves watching the migratory birds come back and putting his sailboat out on the lake for the season.
Thank you so much, Tierney, and thanks for inviting us to kind of advertise what we do. So one of the primary reasons that is usually cited for why people want to purchase land, especially forest land, is for wildlife. And they want to attract wildlife. They perhaps want to hunt, recreate on the land, but a lot of the motivation is to do something with wildlife. And so Jamie Knack, who you see here, who is an Extension Wildlife Outreach Specialist at the University of Wisconsin-Madison campus, as well as myself, also based at the University of Wisconsin-Madison campus. We provide a tremendous amount of support to landowners in a variety of different ways. And I'll talk about those in just a minute. I also want to mention that at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, in the center part of the state, is the Wisconsin Center for Wildlife. And they are in transition right now. They are trying to hire a new director for that center, and probably will name the new director, I would hope, in the next 2 to 4 weeks, something like that. So the focus of what the Wisconsin Center for Wildlife may change a little bit. So I'm not going to talk so much about that, but I would ask you in maybe a month or so to go back and just Google UW-Stevens Point Center for Wildlife, see who's named and see what the focus of their programs are. But a lot of times they also focus on rural landowners and provide support in terms of how to manage your property to attract wildlife. And so that's what a lot of what we do is to help landowners understand how to manage your land to attract wildlife. And that starts a lot of times with just, first of all, understanding what types of wildlife are on your property. So Jamie is the coordinator of a program, as you can see here in the lower center part of the slide, called the Wisconsin Coverts Project. And that's a 3-day intensive workshop for 25 to 30 forest landowners held at Kemp Natural Resource Station up in this northern part of the state. It's free to a forest landowner. You can bring your spouse or partner with you if you wish to. But the idea is that you will receive a tremendous amount of in-class teaching, but you also go out on a variety of field trips to look at different types of harvest schemes for regenerating forest land, for example, or different ways to manage your forest land. And then Jamie and I will spend a bunch of time, as well other speakers, to talk to you about how to identify wildlife in your property, how to inventory and monitor wildlife in your property, and then help you understand the range of options available to you to manage forest land for wildlife. And again, that's a free program. I would encourage you to Google Wisconsin Coverts Project for more information on that. The other thing that we can help you with is inevitably, if you have wildlife in your property, which you are going to have wildlife in your property, whether you actively manage for wildlife or not, sometimes wildlife are going to create some problems that you may not want on your property. So, for example, if you have just harvested some forest land forest land, or let me begin over. If you've harvested timber on your property, for example, and you go to replant either natural regeneration or you actually actively replant saplings or small trees, it's likely that you are going to get some wildlife damage, especially if you're in areas of high deer density, porcupines are nearby, small mammals, rodents, things like that. So the idea is, again, to help you identify the species causing the damage, because most of the time the animals aren't considerate enough to actually cause the damage in front of your face. So you have to do a little sleuthing to understand what animals are causing the problem. And then we can help you understand the range of options available to you to a lot of times not eliminate the damage, because elimination of the damage, 100% elimination, requires a tremendous amount of effort, logistics, cost, things like that. So a lot of times what you're trying to do is reduce the damage level to some tolerable level based on whatever your tolerance is. So we can help you with that. And one thing I would point you to is this website you see in the upper right-hand corner of the slide, wildlifedamage.cals.wisc.edu. There we've got some species-specific fact sheets, or a wide range of species-specific fact sheets you might be interested in, as well as a primer about the overall principles of wildlife damage management. And we also have a summary of wildlife damage, excuse me, laws and regulations that can govern the ways that you manage wildlife damage. And this website is a collaborative effort between Jamie and myself and some colleagues with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, U.S. Department of Agriculture and Wildlife Services, and some previous colleagues at UW-Stevens Point. So again, if you have any questions about wildlife on your property, please do reach out. Again, as I mentioned, wildlife is kind of a natural attraction for a lot of people, and that's a motivator for a lot of people to purchase property and try to understand how best to manage both for your forest management goals as well as your wildlife goals. So I'll look forward to speaking with some of you in the breakout room, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thanks, David. All right, next up, we're going to hear from Kaleb Boulder, who's a private lands biologist with the DNR, and more specifically the DMAP, Deer Management Assistance Program. And Kaleb's favorite spring activity is turkey hunting. Take it away, Kaleb.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, folks. So DMAP, Deer Management Assistance Program, is pretty much the extension of DNR wildlife management. So within wildlife management, we have a private lands program, and it's all kind of umbrellaed under DMAP. So what is DMAP? What we go out to do is foster positive relationships with private landowners. So there's 4 biologists throughout the state. I work in the Northeast, and we have other biologists in the other quarters of the state. We're your main point of contact. You can reach out to us at any time through email, phone call, and we provide technical assistance on all sorts of projects. So any questions about wildlife habitat, it's not specifically targeted at deer. We do a lot of wetland work, grassland work, forest management, all sorts of stuff. So and then what we also do is implement sound landowner specific habitat and herd management. So if you get a site visit with us, what we do is try to tailor a management plan to your needs. So if you want, more deer, less deer on your property, more forest regeneration, food plots, prescribed fire, all sorts of different habitat management techniques, we have, insight and resources to provide to you. And then we also collect data to support deer management in Wisconsin. So there's been multiple research projects through the UW and UWSP using DMAP, harvest data, aging data. So a cool way to get involved with some citizen science in the state of Wisconsin. So DMAP's also then broken down into 3 levels. So level 1 is any landowner. So from 0 to infinity acres, any landowner can enroll in the program. And what that provides to you is our contact information, and we can provide you with that technical assistance on any questions on wildlife management. And then also we do a monthly newsletter, writing up articles on all sorts of land and management, deer management, what's happening within the DNR, county deer advisory committee stuff, all sorts of ways to get involved in wildlife management in Wisconsin. And then level 2 and level 3. So those are the 2 levels that you can get a site visit at. So from 160 to 640 acres is level 2, and that's got a $75 enrollment fee for 3 years. So that'll get you 1 site visit in that 3-year period. And then we also write you a management plan. So a wildlife biologist like myself, and then also a DNR forester will go right out to your property, walk your property, and ask you questions, goals, whatever you have for your property. We'll tailor that management plan to help improve your property to whatever you need it to be. And then level 3, very similar, just a larger acreage threshold, so a little bit more cost just for travel. But yeah, we don't provide any cost share assistance like other programs, but we just provide technical assistance and those potential site visits. So those costs are just covering some of that travel and investment into writing those management plans. But yeah, we have no contracts or anything. We're just here to help you out managing your property in whichever way you want it to go. So you're not stuck in any sorts of requirements for 10 years, 15 years. We're just here to give you advice and get the most out of your property. And yeah, if you can see at the bottom of the screen, it kind of has our slogan, a partnership for healthy deer and healthy habitat. And that's that's what we go by. In all reality, it should be a partnership for healthy wildlife and healthy habitat. So that's what we strive to do. So thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thanks, Kaleb. Next, we're going to hear from Anna Marie Hintz. She is a farm bill biologist with Pheasants Forever, and her favorite spring activities are anything she can do outside, like fishing, gardening, or hiking.
Hi everyone, my name is Anna Marie Hintz, and I am one of 9 Pheasants Forever farm bill biologists in the state, and I kind of cover central Wisconsin. Pheasants Forever mission is to conserve wildlife habitat through habitat improvements, education, and conservation advocacy. But we do a lot more than just work with pheasants. We actually don't do a ton of work with pheasants, but we rather tend to focus on our efforts on habitat improvement, which is why Pheasants Forever is also known as the Habitat Organization. Farm bill biologists assist landowners in designing, developing, managing, and funding habitat projects on private lands. And then we also provide technical assistance. As farm bill biologists, we work with FSA, the Farm Service Agency, and NRCS to implement farm bill programs like CREP, or CRP, Equipped, and CSP. And then all these programs are voluntary programs, and if you're interested, you need to apply. Once you apply, your application is submitted and ranked amongst other applicants, and then the top applicants are selected for funding. CRP is one of the main programs I work with, but since Myha kind of already touched on that, I'll talk about some of the other programs we also work with. So Equipped is the Environmental Quality Incentive Program, and Equip helps producers meet their agricultural and environmental goals. Through Equip, producers receive financial and technical assistance to implement conservation practices on their land. Practices can be geared towards wildlife, cropland, pastures, or forests, and they work to address a resource concern associated with either like soil, water, air, plants, animals, or other human resource concerns. This is a cost share program, and it's designed to cover about 70% of the cost of a project. And then another big program we work with is CSP, which is the Conservation Stewardship Program. CSP builds on existing conservation efforts to strengthen a producer's operation. CSP has enhancements, which are management activities that go above and beyond the minimum conservation practice standards to help producers achieve a higher level of conservation. Enhancements like kind of like the Equip programs, they're geared towards wildlife, cropland, pastures, rangeland, or forests, and they work to address those same resource concerns that Equipped also works for. And then Pheasants Forever also has a team of wetland biologists that focus on easements, and they work to protect, restore, and enhance wetlands. We also have precision ag specialists, which work to take your marginal cropland or those unproductive acres and use precision ag, so your combine maps, to kind of see where you're losing money on your farm and try to not farm those acres or put them into other programs like CRP, where you can make those acres get a profit for you. And then Pheasants Forever has staff throughout the state and the nation. So if you're interested in doing some habitat on your lands, don't hesitate to reach out to me or one of my colleagues.
Great. Thank you so much, Anna Marie. I do want to kindly remind our speakers, we're just hitting the halfway mark from the folks we are going to be hearing from tonight. So just kind of be mindful of the time so we can make sure we get to everybody and then have some time for discussion at the end. All right, great. So next up is Emily Snelson, private lands biologist with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And Emily's favorite springtime activity is bird watching and enjoying the spring migration. Take it away, Emily.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'll be pretty quick. So like Tierney mentioned, I'm a private lands biologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Partners for Fish and Wildlife program. Folks might be familiar with the Fish and Wildlife Service through wildlife refuges or the Endangered Species Act, but the service also has a private lands arm, and that is us. There's about 8 of us in the state of Wisconsin, private lands biologists that cover every county in the state, and we also are present across the country in all 50 states. The Partners Program provides technical and financial assistance to landowners along with partner organizations for habitat restoration and enhancement. And that's a very large, all-encompassing sort of statement because we work with pretty much any type of habitat. We come in and we can help plan, design, supervise, and monitor restoration and enhancement projects. So basically, any landowner who's interested and has land can come and chat with us and potentially get a project going. Every project we do is custom designed to meet the landowner's goals and objectives. We are coming out on site to chat with the landowners, figure out your goals, look at the property, see what our options are, and get the landowner's goals and objectives aligned with ones that align with Fish and Wildlife Service goals. And those efforts focused mainly on benefiting species and habitats of conservation concern. So those things are like restoring prairie, savanna habitat, wetland habitat, and mostly to benefit those threatened and endangered species. So in Wisconsin, we have a lot of big pollinator presence with those. So the monarch butterfly, the Carner blue butterfly, rusty patch bumblebee, but then we also do a lot of focus on migratory birds and migratory waterfowl, and that's where a lot of our wetland work comes from. What's really unique about our program is we're really open to everyone. There's no size requirement. We've worked on projects from the size of 1 acre to multiple hundreds of acres. There's no application process or ranking system, which helps folks, who might not rank very highly for other programs, be a potential candidate for the Partners Program. Getting involved with our program doesn't force your land to become publicly accessible. You still maintain all your property rights. And our agreements come in the form of just a 10-year agreement to maintain your land as best as possible. So kind of really quick, but we are open basically for anyone and everyone who's interested in habitat restoration on their land. Especially if you may not fit into one of those farm bill programs, we might be in a place for you if you have more recreational land. So I'll put my contact information in the chat. Feel free to reach out, and looking forward to hearing questions from you folks later.
Great. Thanks, Emily. Next up, we have Stefan Nelson, Forest Wildlife Specialist with the NRCS and Rough Grouse Society.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. Like Tierney mentioned, I work for Rough Grouse Society, and I work in partnership with the Natural Resources Conservation Service. My position is pretty similar to Anna's at Pheasants Forever, except I mostly work with forest landowners. There are 3 of us with RGS throughout the state. I'm in the Northeast in Anago. Jared Elm is in Spooner in the northwest part of the state. And then Robert Nortman is in the central driftless area out of Whitehall. And we are trying to help folks with achieving their forest and wildlife habitat management goals. And so this could be technical assistance. Often this is helping folks apply for farm bill applications to help offset the cost of doing various forestry and wildlife related projects. A lot of folks in my area are interested in invasive species treatment, as well as a suite of other projects like tree and shrub planting, site preparation, timber stand improvement, helping fund forest management plans get written, different pollinator seedings and plantings, aspen and non-commercial alder shearing, as well as a wide variety of other projects. And so this whole process, like Anna mentioned, is voluntary. We help people work through the entire thing. Some people are just looking for advice. Some people are looking to get some funding to help offset the cost of doing some of these projects. And we also help provide access and contacts for different contractors. And maybe if our programs aren't quite the best, I help and will refer people to people like Kaleb at the DMAP partnership or Fish and Wildlife Service or others. So that is what I got. Thanks.
Great. Thanks a ton, Stefan. All right. And now we're going to hear from Jay Dampier, State Horticulture Outreach Program Manager with Extension. And Jay's favorite spring activity is, of course, watching plants break bud. And also living in Princeton, Wisconsin, he got to watch the sturgeon run this past weekend.
So for your viewing pleasure, I'm going to play the thumbnail behind me that I was taken on Sunday. It's pretty cool watching the sturgeon come in. Yep. So horticulture program, UW-Madison Division of Extension. And the first thing I want you to do is write down that web address, hort.extension.edu. That's going to be something that's going to be very helpful for you in the days and weeks and months to come and years to come as you manage your property. A couple things about, I just want to let you know about our program and also some of the resources that are available to you. So you can see on the slide there's a bunch of events. So we have tons of events, both free and for fee. So free webinars. Most of our webinars are recorded and transcribed. So if you're hearing impaired, you can like read along afterwards. So upcoming events, a lot of great events there, both in person and also Zooms and webinars, kind of like a format tonight. Sometimes we do this kind of stuff as well. So that'd be the first thing that I want to point you to. Can you try clicking? Oh, you got that little circle there. The other critical thing too that I'd really want to steer you towards is ask your gardening questions. So that's a portal that we use to help you with your gardening and tree and you name it questions. So you go in there, give us your name, give us your email. You can upload up to 3 pictures. Like let's say you have a dying ash tree or who knows what. Ask us your question and a real live human being will answer the question. It's not AI. And usually it takes a couple days and it'll be my colleague Peggy or one of the master gardeners that works with her and we'll get an answer to you. If we can't get an answer to you, sometimes it might be a wildlife question. We might reach out to David. You heard him speak a little earlier today. Some of you may have worked with PJ in the insect lab or Brian in the plant pathology lab. Sometimes we'll forward those questions onto them. But since we are plugged in with UW-Madison, we have access to the experts. So if we can't answer it on our small team, we'll get you that answer. Sometimes referring to an agency such as DNR or Department of Ag or whatnot. So if you join me in the chat in a little while, I'd be happy to chat with you also about pollinators because we're going to be talking about pollinators in a few minutes. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay. Next up, we have Cheryl Muller with the Bumblebee Brigade, and she is a volunteer monitor. And her favorite springtime activity is going on hikes and looking for spring ephemerals and bees. And this might be a little out of date, so Cheryl, you might have to remind us, but you saw your first bumblebee of the year?
Actually, I just saw it yesterday.
It was yesterday.
Yeah. So we had a beautiful, beautiful sunny day up here in Eau Claire. And first couple of butterflies and little bees and one queen bumblebee. So that was really exciting. So anyway, well, I'm really happy to tell you about Bumblebee Brigade. It is, as was said, a citizen monitoring project, and the umbrella organization is the Wisconsin DNR. So there are experts, real professionals, but I am just an enthusiastic volunteer who came into this by trying to figure out what was on my flowers in my garden and what I was seeing on walks. So the goal is to understand where we find our different species of bumblebees. There are 17 that if you look hard enough, you can see them, and a few others that we're still looking for. They go across the state in different environments. We've got some endangered ones and some ones that are probably endangered because we don't see them very often. And we are just various people who have land, people who just go for walks, whatever, are out in the woods or the prairies and are trying to figure out what's going on with these bees. Bees are really interesting because we have got a couple different seasons. In the spring, you find the big fluffy queens that are just starting out. They're sort of an individual trying to get going. In midsummer or early summer, you start to see the workers. They're a little bit smaller. That's where it's like, oh my gosh, there's so many bees around here. And that's when the workers come out. And then in the late summer, you start to see a lot of variety of patterns because the male bumblebees, they don't necessarily have the same kind of stripes and dots as the other ones. So it's always changing. It's very exciting. And so I'm excited to learn how to identify all of these different castes, or what they call the queens and the workers and the males are called castes. And some of us just look at the bees that are on our own properties. Some of us travel around a little bit. There are some parts of the state that are not very well monitored. So the area sort of north of Eau Claire and Green Bay just doesn't have very many people in it, so there are fewer observations. And if you are at all interested in trying to figure out what bees are out there, the Wisconsin Bumblebee Brigade is a great place to learn how to identify them. And there's a very supportive Facebook group. So if you're just starting out and all you know is yellow and black, well, we can get you going from there too. So I hope that's enough to get you interested. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Cheryl. Gonna love those bumblebees. All right, next we're gonna hear from Myha Kloppenberg, who is a pollinator conservation specialist with the Xerces Society. And he loves digging up the garden in the spring.
Thank you, and excited to be with you all here this evening. Again, my name is Myha. I work for the Xerces Society as their pollinator habitat specialist. If you haven't heard of us, now you have. I like to think of ourselves as those who have a voice for the animals that join us in this world without a backbone. So we are a organization, nationwide nonprofit, but definitely here and present in Wisconsin, that supports insect and pollinator conservation on farms, in urban areas, wherever you and we might find and care and steward their habitat. We're fairly active in Wisconsin, despite there only me to represent us. Have a couple different programs. One, which is the Wisconsin Habitat Kits for farmers and other communities, sustainable community food projects. I enjoy exploring, investigating, researching, and learning more about grazing cows on planted prairie. If you have a remnant prairie, I'd say protect that, conserve it, and steward it. But if you are planting a prairie, it's absolutely workable. And that's something that Xerces really enjoys doing, is exploring how can we create a multifunctional habitat realm where we are able to enjoy it and have pollinators enjoy it, but then also work it into our landscape wherever it may be possible. We have a variety of other habitat projects, all of which are funded outside of other, through other grant avenues. It's rare that I actually have dollars to spend in order to support on-the-ground habitat projects, and I'm often looked to or involved as a partner supporting NRCS, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and other amazing habitat professionals and conservation professionals here in Wisconsin develop and improve the quality of habitat beyond what we might be considering. So overall, if you have questions on habitat and how to maximize the quality and health and longevity of that habitat, I'm available for consult. I really enjoy designing custom seed mixes as well. To match your interests and those of your soils, and just to broaden the diversity that you might not realize you can include in your seed mix. So again, reach out. I'll post my contact information in the chat, and always happy to help our pollinators and other invertebrate life find permanent, pesticide protected, and diverse habitat in our landscape.
Great, thanks, Myha. And last but not least, we have Emily Martell, who serves as the Education and Outreach Committee Chair for the Wisconsin Prescribed Fire Council. And Emily's favorite springtime activity is finding spring ephemeral wildflowers. Take it away, Emily.
Super, thanks so much. Yes, so I am with the Wisconsin Prescribed Fire Council. Our mission is to promote the safe and effective use of prescribed fire in Wisconsin. We have members pretty much all over the state. A lot of folks who are members of the council are prescribed fire practitioners. So they're contractors who work in restoration, or they are folks who have been really active for a long time, volunteering, have a lot of knowledge. But we're really excited to work with more private landowners. We desperately need more fire on the ground in Wisconsin. And since the vast majority of our state is in private ownership, we really need private landowners to get that done. So if you want to hop into the breakout room with me, I'm happy to talk a little bit about how to access, prescribed fire services and any questions you might have. We also have a great website at prescribedfire.org. I would also highly recommend joining our listserv, where you can email the prescribed fire community with pretty much any of your questions, and someone will probably get back to you. It's a really nice way to reach out with other folks.
Great. Thanks, Emily. I'm going to turn it back over to Olivia now. Oh, actually, one more plug. So I mentioned a little bit about some of the research we've been doing for this USDA grant, and we'd love to hear more from you. So if you would be interested to talk with me more about your land, your story with your land, your goals, your vision, I'd love to hear from you. So my contact information is up on the screen. I'll put it in the chat. And yeah, hopefully look forward to hearing from some of you. All right, go ahead, Olivia.
All right, everybody. So that was a lot of really, really great information, a lot of really, really interesting people, and a lot of even cooler programs that they promote and have information for you. I'm going to now blast a breakout room. If you've never done breakout rooms, no worries. I'm here to help. There will be 4 breakout rooms, and presenters, you'll have to go into the breakout room yourself. But there'll be 4 breakout rooms: the prairies, wildlife, gardens, and Wisconsin prescribed fire. In the prairie and grasslands room, you'll have the FSA with the Conservation Reserve Program and the prairie enthusiasts. In the wildlife room, you'll have UW Extension Wildlife, DNR DMAP, the Pheasants Forever, US Fish and Wildlife, and the Ruffed Grouse Society. In the gardens and pollinators room, you'll have Extension Horticulture and the Bumblebee Brigade and Xerces Society. And then in the Wisconsin Prescribed Fire Council, you will have the Wisconsin Prescribed Fire Council asking for more of, or telling you more information about fire. And I am going to launch that. And so you can just go into them. You do not have to stay in the same one. You can move in and out. And this is when you can turn on your cameras and your microphone and get to know people. This is when you can ask those actual questions. We've wrangled all these conservation professionals here for you to get to know. And I have to redo it, I guess. I tried to redo it before the breakout, the presentations, and it didn't let me. So prairie, then wildlife, and